We're in the studio now because this is the second episode of season 2. But before we start doing that, I want to do a roundup of season 1. Because if you've been on this journey with me, you will know that there's been some ups and downs. But overall, it's been a great learning curve for me. And I want to go through some of this now because there's so much content out there where you see a cut and edited piece and it looks so perfect. And that's what you've seen over the weeks and months of the content I've put out. You've probably seen some bloopers as well, but majority of it has been edited so well by the studio that I'm in. But I want to tell you what's gone on behind that. So coming in the studio today is actually Dr. Corey Block, and this is our second episode we're going to be doing of this. But he was my first guest in season 1. And I just want to go through a couple of things with you now because first of all, the way I'm sat now, I'm really upright. During that podcast, I felt like I was laying back at like a 45, 90 degree angle. And when you're trying to be or look like you're engaged with somebody, that's probably the worst feeling that you want to have. So that was a big thing. And I felt like the mic was so much in my way. Now, you think, I should be able to stop the podcast and go on with it. I didn't feel comfortable enough to do that. And what I've got here is as well, I've got notes. Now, there's 3 cameras. The camera is not going to be on me all the time. So really, as Dr. Corey Block is speaking, or any guest is speaking, I should be able to look down and have a look at my notes. Now, I felt I couldn't do that because first of all, I thought the cameras were all on me. And second of all, when you're trying to be engaging with somebody, the worst thing you can do is kind of not listen to them and look at your notes. So from the first episode, again, failing my way in public, that's what this is all about. And I'm going to go through some more of these stories with you, but that was the first one. Second one coming up, Andrew Stotterbrooks. Now, give the back content here. I was at an event and I was having a great conversation. I went up to Andrew, or Stotts as he likes to be called, and he's so welcoming. And we had a great conversation. I said, look, I'm starting a new podcast. I'd love you to be on the show. And him being the great guy he is, he says, yeah, I'd love to do it. So I got him in the studio and I learned my lesson in regards to, I can look at notes, it's okay, I don't need to be at a 90 degree angle again. All of these things were a bit clearer. But then one of the questions that I asked is like, how can I improve better for next time? And what he mentioned to me was, he was like, you kind of just went straight into it. It was kind of like a bit like a business meeting. And and when you look at the psychology of doing things and human behavior, it's really nice to compliment people before you get started with something. Now, what I have to be careful of there is still staying authentic. Now with Andrew, if you know him, everything is finished with a heart emoji. He loves everything. He loves everyone. He's very to the point and very direct, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of him as well. But when you're in his world, then there's no other better feeling of him giving you his attention and him asking questions and wanting to engage. Now, in the clip, which I'll show with this as well, Andrew speaks openly about if he doesn't understand something, he's going to put his hand up and ask a question. And that is so important because, and he mentions this, like he's so happy that he's able to ask that because that's a skill of his. And he'll go into more detail there. But how many people in meetings that you've attended or you've been part of where you don't feel comfortable enough to put your hand up and say, sorry, I don't get what you mean? There's nothing wrong with asking. People want to make sure that you understand. And Andrew speaks openly and freely about this as well. Now, another person, a very, very close friend of mine, someone who I met in 2009, someone I appreciate and are truly inspired by, because what this podcast is about is building a career. I'm very much against this idea of everybody should be an entrepreneur because it's not for everybody. So Adam, Wolfie as he's known close by his friends, he was in the studio and you'll see the clip with him, but he's a technical director within the business. He grew within the business, and it's so interesting what he mentions in regards to sales and technical sales. But what I really am inspired by with him is that he rised up the ranks within the company, stayed loyal, was given part of the business because of what he brings as value and his commitment to the business, and he was rewarded for that in the end. And I think it's just such a great example of somebody staying loyal, being great at your job, always be learning, which is what he speaks about as well. So Adam, thank you for being on the show. And I know that when I have you back in the next few years, the next chapter is going to be even better. Next person, someone who became a director, a leader of mine when I was working at Mead. He came into the business and straight away we hit it off. He asked me to present the product, and I'd only learned recently about asking questions and how to ask questions. So the fact I was doing that, I was pretty much ahead of everybody else. But he then gave me a promotion within the business, and something which I will always be grateful for. But what I didn't tell Greg was that maybe he shouldn't wear shorts to the meeting. And you'll probably see in the video as well, he is a little bit relaxed. Maybe I've made him a bit too relaxed, but that's okay. I've got no problem with that. But I would say what happened there was me and Greg were very, very comfortable with each other. And I got feedback at one time to say, like, yes, it's great you're having a conversation with your mate, but there was points which you were bringing up, which was kind of like a private party moment, and maybe other people were not going to get that. And another thing, and this is what I battle with as well, we spoke a lot about football analogies in regards to leadership and building teams, having a strong bench, all of these types of things. And even before that, I said, let's not talk too much about football, but we did. And the reason why I said let's not talk too much about football is because I don't want to isolate a certain part of people who maybe might not know football. But the truth is, if that's what I'm passionate about talking about, then why shouldn't I talk about it? Do I want those people to still engage and listen, and I still feel I can bring value to them? Yes. But if we're having a conversation that ends up being an example of football, then it is what it is. And that's something which I have to be staying true to myself and be authentic about. So that was a lesson for me. Then let's move on to another very close friend of mine, someone I grew up with. And I don't think you can ever get better friends that know you when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, because that is your growth period where there's certain things that go on in your life that you wish nobody knew about. But back then, thank God, there isn't or wasn't the videos and the pictures like there is today, because I don't think we would have survived at that time. But Michael Kenner, somebody who I'm inspired by. I mean, he just has the balls to go for it, to put it bluntly. He just goes for it. And he actually started a company called The Nuts. I think it's called The Nuts. And that was they started his poker chips at him and my friend Lawrence. But The Nuts is when you go all in poker. And that's exactly what he is all about. Now, him, Paul, Brendan, and Alon, because we need to give credit to Alon as well, started a business a number of years ago called Fazwaz. And it got built to such a level that companies started to be interested to buy it. And they sold the company. The dream, building the company, selling it, amazing, isn't it? But you then get seller's remorse. And they realize that we still want this. There's still so much to do. So he bought back the company. And he didn't just buy back his company, he bought back the company who acquired him. And I think that's such an amazing story. And again, we touch on a little clip, but all of the episodes will be in this little roundup, which I do. So there's so many little nuggets which he dropped. And he is very open, very authentic about the mistakes that he has made. He leaves nothing. He leaves nothing on the table. He's open to talk about all of it. And that's why I love you, Kenner. Now, when we go into the next person, Emma Jourdain, the culture queen. Now, CQ, cultural intelligence. There's EQ, there's IQ, and now there's CQ. And that is the cultures and the dynamics within a business. And I've experienced this firsthand. Coming over from the UK, we have a mentality of doing things a certain way. You arrive here in Dubai, the UAE, the Middle East, and things are very, very, very different. And anything which I had an idea of, which is let's do it the British way, I had to leave to the side because I had to adapt. And that's so important. You have to adapt to the environment you're in. And I'm proud to say it's one of the big reasons why I've still been here in the UAE since 2008, so for over 17 years, because I went on a journey to understand the people in front of me, how they want to be communicated with, how they want to be spoken to. And all of those points are so important when you want to build strong relationships. And Emma touches on a few key points, and I'll leave that for this clip now. Then there's another person. When I was working at a barrister's chambers, and I was a clerk in 2004, which is just a glorified word for a T-boy, an office junior, I worked at a chambers, and that's a barrister's chambers, and that is where the barristers reside in, and that's where they have their meetings, they do their pupillage there, it's an office for them, and then it's very, very close to the Royal Courts of Justice. So every day I was going with files and documents, going to the RCJ, dropping the files off, and whether it was rain, snow, sleet, whatever it was, that's what I had to do. Get the coffees ready, get the teas ready. And I have to be honest with you here, it was a point for me where I was really annoyed and frustrated because the barristers were great with me, they were amazing, but the other clerks were just dickheads, to be fair. That's how it was, I put it bluntly. So I got annoyed. I thought, right, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to become a lawyer, I'm going to show them. It didn't quite work out like that. But meeting Bushra, who resides and has been in the UAE for the past, I think around about 12 years now, she's taken her law practice of what she was doing in the UK, and she now uses it within the DIFC within the UAE. Now, I won't get too technical into the legalities here of everything like that, but within that zone, within the UAE, those practices of law, it is an international law, it is a common law, which means that there's common laws that are commonly practiced within certain countries, and it doesn't matter which country you're in, as long as you're in that zone, that's the contracts and the terms that you live by. And we went into detail about mistakes that employees make, mistakes that companies make, how to mediate, litigation. All of these were great points, and it was great having her on the show. And I think that you can see within the podcast that the banter was great, the communication was great, and it just flowed, which I'm really, really proud of with that. Because to speak and communicate with somebody who is so smart, so intelligent, and be able to maintain that conversation, even though at times I was like, oh, okay. But I was willing enough to kind of ask a bit of a deeper question to understand that. And that's what I'm really proud of with that. And last but not least, somebody, and I'll tell you now because I've made a mistake here, because I've tried to find the content for the episodes, and the only thing I've got is the YouTube video. And as much as I can probably use something from that, I haven't actually got the original. And that was my mistake from my side, because I didn't get on to the editing team quick enough with it. And you only have a certain time period where they keep the content. So that almost never got made. But we put it together, and we had the double act, which is DNA, Darren and Andrew. And I was really proud to have these guys on the show, because first of all, I've known Darren for a number of years. We went to school together, but they were two guys which were on Britain's Got Talent. And they were people like, I think magician is the wrong word, so forgive me for using the wrong word here. But they were illusionists, and they were able to persuade people on stage to influence them to make decisions. And what I love about that is, and it relates so much to what I do within sales, is that you're giving somebody who thinks that they have control, and you're influencing them, persuading them in a way to make a decision in an ethical way, which leads them to what they really, really want. So it was great having those guys on the show. If I showed a clip, one thing that happened was I didn't have any hair gel with me that day. That was my big mistake. And I was like, yeah, it'll be okay. But it's that one video which I just do not like, because my hair is so fluffy in it. And Darren and Andrew will openly say to you as well, and Darren even made a comment on this, Darren is now half the size that he used to be, half the man he used to be. And that video was a big awakening for him, because it's not until you see it yourself, like he'd actually put on a lot of weight, and he's open about it, so I'm not being rude here, but I'm really proud of what he's done, because he's done a health kick and he's been able to lose all that weight, and he's out there and he's doing gigs, and he's on stage, and he just looks great for it now, so that's wonderful. But having those two guys on the show, and then the way they articulate stories and communicate, I learnt a lot from it. But yeah, the hair gel moment was was the blooper, which I wish I left without the hair gel. Yeah, so that was my big problem. Now, as I round up here, this is the roundup of season 1. And we've either cut into this, we've shown the episodes, or we've just gone straight into it. But it's really important that we talk about the failures. And that's why failing my way in public to success is so important, because too many people out there are just showing content and it's a masterpiece. When truly, the guy behind the camera right here, right now, makes everything perfect. And I'm so grateful for that, because you've seen me go, you've seen me do all these things, but these guys are masters at their work and they make it look like nothing happens. So enjoy the episodes and look out for season 2.